Thanks for having me, Janice and Brandon, and I hope that yeah, I'm calling you from Stockholm, Sweden, and it's about 1 a.m. here. But I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about just where I came from and the background of the project. So I came to New York City on my own in my early 20s with $200 in my pocket and big dreams, and I wanted to find a way to reinvent myself and to live the life of an artist. And ever since, I've had my own photography practice, and often it really involves to work collaboratively with subjects and in different ways. And in 2020, I received the chance to work as the head of culture and public affairs for the Consulate General of Sweden in New York. And so then I was offered to work with cultural diplomacy and worked on projects with human rights, culture, and democracy. And this was in the middle of the pandemic. And so I was isolating in New York, and see if I can get to the next slide here. And so I decided to, after the assignment was done, to make a pilgrimage through my America, a country that I've spent almost 30 years in, and to listen to and to meet people on the way and photograph them. So I'm just going to share a small teaser to the work.
I came to this country over 25 years ago. I always used my camera as a passport. Walker Evans, Richard Avedon, and Robert Frank, they all photographed America. I wanted to take a new look at the country. After a long time of isolation, get out on the road and charge my way across America. I wanted to meet face to face with people, photograph them where they were, maybe have a few conversations.
I was really depressed for months and months, and now I'm starting to get my juice back and realize that it's not going to take anything other than just having faith and putting some work and putting work in myself to just get back on my feet.
And use the charging time creatively.
In 2.2 miles, turn right.
One thing I do long for is the safety and nature and the beauty to return to the world.
It's about helping people have access to all of God's blessings so that they have the same opportunities as everybody else.
Route 66 is the Mother Road. It speaks about westward migration, a road of hopes and dreams and opportunities.
I'm more worried about my own bubble, my own tribe and family.
We call it Mother Earth, Father Sky, because Mother Earth is taking care of us on the ground. Father Sky is providing the light in the night and day.
El planeta sea uno solo. I hope for
So I really wanted to get back on the road and have real meetings with people. And for the project, I wanted to create a really strong framework so that I could be a bit free inside of it and to have more space. So when you work with creativity, I feel like you stop and listen and observe, and this really magical journey starts. I was also really influenced by Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that I read when I was in my 20s, and this idea of poetic contemplation on the road and the symbolics that came from that. And here's an image actually of my husband, who was part of the journey, was very important as part of the journey also. And and also my co-pilot Pony, who was my dog. And so also, you know, just like different photographers have represented America in different ways, and also the American West during different times. And we had the FSA, the Farm and Security Administration, where Dorothea Lange photographed during the Depression era with farmers and their lives. And there's mostly men who have photographed also, Robert Frank, Walker Evans, Avedon, all during different times. And I wanted, as an immigrant, I'm also present in the European and American culture simultaneously in a way. So I'm both inside and outside at the same time. And I think that also goes for being an artist and, you know, having, you know, a subjective perspective. So just being aware of that. And so the book starts with a red skyhawk. So I just wanted to open the book. So I used this red color. I blended it. I actually blended it from color of the blood, which I feel like that's, you know, we're all the same blood in a way, and something that unites. And so here's the first page of the book. And so it starts from his perspective, and, you know, how does he see the world? And he says, there are many different secrets and lessons hidden in every tree, every rock, and every leaf. There are relatives who teach us things just the way it used to be among the native people. And this was in New Mexico. And so I wanted the road and the journey itself to be my studio, but also the open road. And working with the electric vehicle also made us move around in a different pattern, I feel, from east to west and then back. And the idea was to really embrace coincidence and random encounters, just like playing the dice in a way, and to have coincidence be that framework. And I was also curious whether this, you know, the media's image of the division in American society was real, and to meet people, you know, and listen to their thoughts and dreams and seek out different perspectives and voices. So that was the background of the project in a way, the framework. And in the book also, I just want to read this to you. A radio voice crackling a sermon about the end of days keeps us company in the dark. On the side of the road, a discarded umbrella has been swindled off of its chance to serve during a rainstorm in Oklahoma, where people and trees alike bend in the wind. So there's a foreword also in the book by Samore, a wonderful artist. And and some of the text is written by me as well, and mostly quotes of the people that I've met, of their thoughts and interviews that I took down. And everywhere I went, I saw the signs of climate change. This is taken in 2022, and at the beginning of 2024, this place, which is Badwater Basin in Death Valley, was flooded. So you could really see the, you know, the climate change all over, also after, and how it alters the landscape. And here's some charred Joshua trees on the way between, also in California, I think. And the Waffle House in Pennsylvania. Also, we started off, you know, leaving New York into Pennsylvania in a really, really heavy rainstorm. And it was pretty scary. Sometimes it was it was a lot of water and a lot of rain downfall. And, you know, this happened when we were pulling off to just have a lunch in the car. These two people came up and they were homeless, and they, you know, and I told them what I was doing on this project, on this trip, and we set up a studio in the back of the trunk. And I just feel like there's something really radical about opening up to strangers and having meetings with strangers. Just only after a couple of minutes, it feels like differences seem to fall away and you start looking for similarities. And yeah, we all have our individual stories that we tell ourselves and others, but there's seems to be much more that connects us than divides us, is my general feeling here. There's some kids that we met on the way also outside of a McDonald's. And then this is Alvin. This was on the way back, met in Georgia. So he writes, or he tells me, I taught soldiers how to absentee vote. The 1965 Voting Rights Act eliminated obstacles that kept us African Americans from registering to vote. I experienced something that made me cry. It was when Obama became president and they played a song by Sam Cooke, A Change is Gonna Come. I wept because my parents weren't there to witness this. In Virginia, I met Barrett, who dreamt of being an artist like her grandmother. But she wanted to make more colorful paintings, she said. This is in Chincoteague where I met her, and where there are the wild ponies. And I'm just thinking also about sources a lot and influences of the work and which context, I'm working in. And I had this recent find of Marta Berglund, who was a relative of mine, who worked as a photographer in the early 1900s. And she was a portrait photographer, but also went outside of the studio with this big camera. And so after returning from this trip, I found a similar image in the archive of hers. And it really made me think of, where does the gaze come from? Is it something you can inherit? There was so many similarities between our works. And also I thought of, like, if there is this idea of collective consciousness, is there something like a collective vision? So I'm just going to leave that as a thought. And so in Oklahoma is where also I met Nona, who was a foster care caseworker who takes care of homes for tribal children for the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. And she said, the hurdle is finding tribal homes and keeping our kids connected with our culture. It's a generational trauma that goes on and on. It bogs me down to think about the complications of our country. So I always think of Paris when I see this sign also. It's like Paris, but parts, but something is missing. I'm just going to play a small clip also from this meeting.
I'm more worried about like my own tribe and family. On one hand, I'm thankful to be here in this country, but on the other hand, there's so many wrongs to be fixed. The biggest challenge is we don't have enough homes. The bulk of our children go outside of the tribe to non-Native American homes.
I'm forgetting all my questions all of a sudden. This is the biggest wound I find in America.
When I was 18, I came out as queer, and my family had a really big struggle with that. At that point, I realized that I could never return home. I had shifted them. I had shifted their ideologies with my presence, and that there was no more space for them to hold that in front of me, because I was in front of them and it was my being there. So I chose to start returning.
Yeah, so that was a pretty amazing meeting I had with Ocean. And when the first day back in New York, I made a portrait of him or of them. And they also ran for office upstate. such an amazing person. And yeah, there was so many wonderful meetings, and I was so grateful how people opened up to me and shared their stories. Here's somebody I met in New Mexico, and he said, Paul, America represents freedom, and I long for equality for everyone. The future is vague and unsure. And Michelle, I met in California, but I actually knew her from before. So when I was out there, we decided to meet up, and she's an amazing performer, and she talked a lot about racism. And she says, to navigate as a person of color in this country, you learn how to survive. Do I just move on and try to fight this some other way? And this is after she told me a story about being stopped and frisked, basically, at the side of the road, where the officer left them at the side of the road because of her skin color. And yeah, so some of these stories, of course, this is a very complex matter in so many ways, but it was pretty painful to hear these stories and to share. Added an animal also in the portrait section of the book. And I don't know if Timberlin is with us tonight. I think she might be, who knows? But I met her in Las Vegas, in Nevada. And she shared a story with me about how she and her mother both found out they had cancer at the same time. And it was a very emotional meeting also. We didn't have that much time, but connected. And she also talked a lot about her view on America. And one of the quotes she left me is, right now, America is not what I thought it was. I'm confused about what's really going on. And also Trill, such a wonderful spirit that I also met in Vegas, who is also gracing the cover of this book. And so at the end of the first leg, I visited the Salton Sea. And this was in 2022, and photographed the area and the different buildings and structures that were out there. This is the Devotion trailer, and I'm sure a lot of you guys know where that is since you're so close. I photographed Eoka, who had moved out there after hearing about this place Into the Wild. And he was formerly homeless in Washington, in the state of Washington, and he decided to move out here to this area, and said that the government leaves him alone there because it's inhabitable because of the toxic dust. And he has tried to create this type of living situation, which is very much off the grid. And he said, if I can live here, I can live anywhere. And then I said, what about New York? And he's like, no. So at the beginning of this year, 2024, I returned to the Salton Sea area where I'd photographed him, Eoka, and also a woman, Vida, and her son, Prince, 2 years before. And known as the last free and lawless place in America, this is seen to be one last frontier of the great American West. And the conditions are really, really harsh there. And heat stroke and drug overdose are common causes of death of the people that live there. So I was trying to find the people I had photographed. So I stood at the side of the road. And then after a while, there was this hitchhiker that stood on the road. And my husband and my dog were in the car waiting, and I spotted this person from far away, and he introduced himself as Daddy Lewis. And we struck up a conversation, and he gave me a really beautiful. We talked a lot, and he was very much a very wise person. And he said some things that I want to share one thing he said here. I learned a lot out here. I know every light that goes out at night. I know who my friends are. I know what's worth fighting for and what's not. I know how far I can run and how many steps I can take with no shoes on. You take your water bottle and make a little puddle, and you step in the water. It builds up a little adobe under your foot, another step and another, and you can walk forever. And here's the shoe trees out there also, for the people that decided to walk without shoes, perhaps. And as we stood there together, I showed him this picture I'd taken of Vida and her son Prince. And I asked if he knew her, if she was still around. And then he said, yes, I know who she is. And then if he could take me to see her. And so he walked me a pretty long distance through the desert to go see her in her place. And she had changed her name. She was now Dahlia, and she had forgotten all about our meeting and the photograph. And she was now in school to be a death doula, and took me to see her new place, new space beside her place where she lived, in this kind of hangar-shaped building. And she had made a shrine there for someone who had passed in the community of overdose as well. And yeah, so it was really interesting to come back and see these, see some of the people, see the place again, to come back and see how the place had changed. And it had in some ways. It's also really interesting with the Salton Sea area, because it is it used to be promoted as a vacation spot, and they built up all these structures and around this area. And then there was flooding and different waste products got into the water. All the wildlife started to die, and it became basically inhabitable. And then, with the desert and the desert winds, it started to throw up the dust in the air, and it's toxic. So a lot of people moved out of there, and then again, people started to move in there again. People that wanted to live off the grid, people that were maybe artists or wanting to, sort of free thinkers, and like this person, Daddy Lewis, who was a programmer and worked in AI and robotics, I think, before in New York City. Decided to just switch his life around and move out there. And so they live in these very, impermanent structures, and they have, in this place called Slab City, they have their own law, which they called slab justice. And sometimes when there's, conflicts, they burn each other out. And yeah, so it can be very rough, but it's also offers a lot of good things for the people there, and people get very inspired out there making art. And he said he had started to play the guitar, which he had never done before, if he had stayed in New York City or other places. So yeah. So, and there's a lot of these interesting structures that are built, and here's the American. I think this is one of a good image to end on, almost with the subject matter of America. And yeah, so that's kind of my presentation. It went faster than I thought it would be. So we definitely have some time now for more conversation, which I hope we can do. And here's also a link if you want to get the book. So
thank you so much, Florence. We do have one question in the Q&A. Dean asks, why did you choose black and white?
great. So this is a really good question. I get this question quite a bit. And I think part of what it was I wanted to place these images in a historical context already. I wanted them to already be part of these other surveys that had been made by other photographers. So also, I've always thought in black and white mostly from my early start. So that's just how I saw this project, I think. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you chose the locations and how you are all of the people you just ran across, or did you somehow get their names ahead of time? Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that question. So as I said in the beginning, the framework was that I wanted to work a lot with chance as an element. And I wanted to do this journey also in a sustainable way. I wanted to think about what the other photographers had done in the past. Of course, you always work in a context of other, historical photographers. But I thought, what would that look like if I did it today? And then I thought of the sustainability aspect of it and how I wanted to talk about climate in my own way. And so I got a couple of different cars. Ford came through and Polestar. And the electric vehicle really made this idea of random and how to move around in a different way possible. And because I wanted to invite chance into it, and I also wanted to like shake myself up a little bit and try to meet people, which can be, after a long time of isolation, it can be a bit of a shock to the system to meet all these strangers. But I wanted to make myself a bit vulnerable like that. And so no, I didn't set up really anything except from Michelle that happened to be out there when I was in California. And she's otherwise also, she's from Washington State. But other than that, no setups, really. Most of the people, so when I stopped the car and charged, I made a game with myself that I would set up studio and pick someone, like anyone outside, and just walk up to first best stranger, or, trying to not only, there was a lot of mostly white middle-aged men that came in front of the lens, and I tried to be aware that I had to be more open and just kind of seek out myself and be more directional in that way. So because I wanted to hear other voices also, I think. Yeah, maybe voices that are not always heard. So yeah.
Tim asks, when you were out in Slab City, did you visit Salvation Mountain?
Yes, I did. I think I have maybe something from there, but it's so yeah, no, it's interesting, but it's so photographed and so you've seen it so many times. And I had a professor from ICP. I went to school at ICP, International Center of Photography in New York, and my professor said to me when he sent me off of the trip, he said, we had like a brunch before I was gonna leave, where he gave me his blessing, and he said, if you see something that you think you've seen before, just turn the other way. So I thought, okay, that's really good advice, because after a while also we went on from New York up to Chicago and then Route 66 to which was gonna, for me was interesting because it's the mother road and talks about, migration in different ways westward and people's dreams and things. So that place is so loaded with nostalgia, and I did not really care to photograph that as much. That was one of the things I consciously turned away from and try to see other things, more seek in nature or seek somewhere else, or seek in the meetings.
On that subject, someone asks, how often were you rejected when you approached folks?
There was a couple of times, for sure. I think what really strikes me as quite incredible is that people were so open. And I don't know if it was perhaps the long isolation that was before that, where people wanted to speak. There was a couple of times where I was rejected, and they were pretty horrible and traumatizing. A woman started screaming at me and cursing me out. That was horrible. Yeah, there was a few times, but most of the people actually took their time and they, shared that moment with me. And some people were in distress. There was this person I met in a parking lot. There was also a funny one because that was a bit different from the others. I saw a license plate and I got kind of obsessed that we were going to follow that car. So I told my husband, follow that car. And we just kind of went, and we had to go to church anyways. So we followed this car to a parking lot. And the guy, I walk up to the guy, and you just never know what you're going to meet. So I think being a woman sometimes can help because you're not as intimidating, perhaps. Or you have a certain way to, get access, perhaps, in other ways. I don't know, maybe there's a softness and you're not as dangerous. So I started speaking to this person, and he just, spilled out his life. And he told me that he had lived with his entire family in a motel room for 2 years. And he had some, he had worked in mental health and was a caseworker or something like this. And he had seen some things that he couldn't really recover from. And, they wanted to put him on medication and it didn't work, and so on and so forth. But it was these stories and how people just really sometimes kind of overshared also, which was fine. But I felt a bit like a priest, like taking confessions. And also what I did was I've been meditating for many, many years. I have a TM practice, but also I do other practices too. And what I tried to do was to just keep a mindfulness moment with a person and ask them to close their eyes and be in their bodies and things like that. And then sometimes they started crying when we did this together, even if it was just a minute. But then I felt like they landed in their bodies in a different way, and the meetings could actually take place. And that was magical. Like this kind of reveal, you're spending a couple minutes with a person you never met before. You don't know anything about them. And they're suddenly like, you're just being with them. And you're just sharing this moment and this time. And there's just really very little between. And that was my takeaway. And I think in a way, the idea of the device, the big, great divide and all that stuff, I don't buy it anymore, because I think that there's so much more similarities between us. There's so much more that we share than that we don't share. And I think that's also a really good starting point to start solving things that we have at hand. Yeah.
Another question, which I've gotten before, and it can be a tough one, but their question is what is your favorite image from the journey or from the book? And hopefully it's in the presentation so you could show it to us again. But if you have, if you can have one, and maybe it's an image that you feel like kind of encapsulates the whole project for you, if it's too hard to pick a favorite. Do you have something like that?
Oh gosh. That's a really good question. I love this one. I think I love this one very much. I don't know
Can you
what it is.
tell us a little why?
Yeah. So I shot this in front of a large truck, and I said, this is Vida, and she kind of didn't want to be photographed, and then I just said, it's not going to take that long. And then she was a good sport, and she did this with me, and we shared information, and then I went to see her again. I love this one. She had such presence in her eyes, and I actually at that time we didn't really speak much, but there was so much with her that pulled me back to want to try to go see her again. And on a funny note, this year when I saw her, she was wearing the bottom part of this uniform with the bones and stuff, and she wasn't wearing the top, but she was wearing the bottom. So it was like 2 years later, and it was wonderful to see her again, and it just connected visually for me when I met her. But also seeing how she was out there by herself with this kid, and I didn't really know her at all then, but she has definitely gone through a lot of processing, being out in the desert, living like this, sort of, peeling the onion and peeling off all these layers of oneself. And yeah, so there was so much in her that I wanted to go back and see. Yeah.
Zach is asking, since each portrait stands alone very well, how do you sequence stories in a book so that they play well off each other in an overarching story? That's
a really good question, actually. So I worked with an art director, Anders Weiner, on this, it was a great collaboration, and I want to see if I can share some things. So sometimes it was just an element. So these images are not really coupled after, it's not like the portrait and the location where they were in. I've been more free with it. Sometimes, like in this one, you can see like you have the tree there and you have her here. So that's the same location. But a lot of times it's not like that. This one I love. This is a great example, actually. So we have this woman. This woman who I also met in this area, and this is a very silly thing, but she has like a hummingbird on her shirt there, and then there's birds in the tree, and it feels like an opposite tree, like the actual tree itself has fallen down, and I just thought it was quite wonderful together. So sometimes it's like a little bit of comedic twist, like maybe not everybody's going to see it, but there are those correlations. But also the text also decides sometimes what it's going to be on the other side. And then you have, sequencing the book, I always wanted to also give some breathers. So sometimes I have, more simple things or full spreads. So yeah, that's also part of it.
How long did you work on the book? Did you work on it with an editor, or is it all your design?
So I worked with an art director who is very, very good. And so we were together editing the book. I had a very strong vision already of what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with this kind of layout. I wanted it to be landscape in this format. And I wanted to also have as a graphic element all the GPS points of where we are in the which location. So there's, you know, these navigational data, which is also every time you change location. Also, it's not sequential. It doesn't go from New York to California and California back to New York. It's really like a bit open like that too. But in terms of the graphic design, I basically designed it, but I had help with the art director who just gave me some good notes. And there was actually 2 people that were helping me with this. So, yeah.
Someone asks, how did the experience of traveling across the US and working on this photo project change you? Or did it not?
I feel like I felt rich afterwards because of all the people I had met, all the people that I had interacted with, and I got over a bit of my fear of talking to strangers. That was a good one. And also just it was it's a pretty big project because I had to find somebody who could pay for the journey and for the having sponsors. Also, I would have to shoot things on the side that were more commercial assignments type stuff. But I love working in both commercial and the fine arts world, so it wasn't but it definitely does makes things a little bit more challenging. You have to be sharp in both ways at the same time because it's on the same journey. But I guess I got more confidence that I could do projects on this scale, and how it changed me. I think it gave me a different look at America that I didn't have before. I only knew certain things from media, but to see this firsthand, and I kind of fell in love with the country again, and felt more part of it in a way. Not as much. I think as a photographer, it's easy to just set up your lens and then you're not participating. You're just kind of looking at something and you're not part of it. And I wanted this to be different. So I tried to do different things through the process with it. And also have their voices be heard, not mine so much. And yeah. And we filmed everything as well. So there's definitely a short film coming out. Yeah. Oh, I don't hear anything.
Sorry, that was one of the next questions. Are you planning to make a film?
Oh, yes. Yes. I have, right now I have 3 films that I'm working on at the same time. So I have to do this one first, which is a collaboration with Swedish television. And then I have 2 others, and this is one of them. So, but they're all, they're all art or creative art documentaries in a way. Yeah, so, but also I've been playing a little bit with formats, if it should be a short or a longer format. I definitely have material for a longer format. But there's also something that goes for, spreading it during this time, where, during the election time, and raising awareness about other voices.
That leads nicely into Chad's question. They ask, were you ever conflicted about publishing any photos or stories because they were too personal or painful?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like you have a responsibility. Like it is so sensitive what you share and what you don't share. I definitely was conflicted about that, actually. And my husband is a great editor too, so he's helped me a lot, and he does that professionally. And he's also a performer, but yeah, that it was, it has to be the right tone and not make anyone vulnerable, too vulnerable, but still vulnerable enough so that people can also feel that this could be me, or this I can relate to this in some way. And it's really about being, sharing the experience of being, a human being, and sharing humanity. So there's no value to it in that way.
There's a comment that agrees with you. Through my travels, I've had similar spiritual experiences with people. Yes, we're all the same, more alike than different. I was just wondering if there are any more questions out there, go ahead and type that in the Q&A. But I was also wondering what's next, or what is the project you've been working on since you published the book?
I actually just published a new book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's called Scenes from an Island. And it's with Kerber Verlag, and it's a collective works of 10 years of work, where I was living I was doing multiple stays at the Ingmar Bergman Estate, the director and author in Sweden. He has an estate that was made into an artistic residence for people and scholars and things, and you can search, you can apply for it. And so I was so lucky to get it. It's very hard to get this at this time, but so I made this work about the human conditions and transience, time and identity. And it's about the location, and it has a similar vibe to it, but it's very different from this. This is much more documentary in a way, more than I usually do. So this project is a bit different for me. This one the America series is quite different. This one, the Scenes from an Island, is more goes back into my more past of painting and things like that, because I used to paint a lot. So yeah, so it's on my website as well. You can find it, and you can, it wasn't really released yet in the US, but it's been released in Europe, and I'm going to Paris Photo with it. But you can still get a copy that I can sign on this link also, the same.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put that link in the chat again. To your book. Any last minute questions? Anyone out there? Anything?
Is there anyone? I was thinking, is there anyone that was photographed that's on the call? Since I can't see anyone.
No one's written in. Well, I wanted to say thank you so much for sharing this body of work. It is very moving, and it's such a timely body of work at this point in America with the elections coming up. It's great to see your experience and your journey of talking to a lot of people that we don't normally get a chance to talk to on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was interesting. I just have another quick little anecdote was at first it was just going to be one way going through from New York to California, and then we spent some time in California, and then I felt I didn't have enough. There was something missing. There was like I didn't have enough images, and I had to figure out how to get back, and there was like so many things. So I thought we should just do it again. So then we took the southern route, which was quite different. I hadn't really been in these areas before, and gave me a different vibe. We went to New Orleans and Louisiana and all that stuff, and through Texas, and spent some time going up the coast to Chincoteague Island and all that, and the Blue Mountains, and really breathtaking landscape. which is just wonderful to be able to experience, and it gave me some more images that I felt like I didn't have enough of. But I wanted it not to also be like a 3-year project. It should just, be something that I do, very focused and just get like a glimpse. I'm not really saying that I'm capturing it all. These are just, individuals along the way, and but pretty varied people, in different ways.
One of the scary things for photographers oftentimes is going up to strangers and asking them if they can, interact with them and take their picture. Do you have any just like tips that you might give maybe someone who's just starting out but wanting to do that kind of photography?
Well, maybe, yeah, I think, first of all, I think that, like, think about what you want to contribute with, like, what do you want to give this person, rather than, just taking their picture and leaving. Like, more like make it something deeper, make it, more real for you. Also be present and not just so focused on making the image, and take your time. That's the first thing. And also, when you approach someone, maybe don't do it with a camera around your neck. I've done that a lot. And I think it's less successful because that's the first thing you see. So instead of meeting, as a person without, about a specific goal in mind, I think it's better to just lay off the camera and then go get it, if you have the possibility to do that, or keep it in your bag.
That's a great tip that I've actually never heard. Yeah, not carrying your camera with you. Most photographers are like, I always have to have it on me. You never know. But it's an interesting to not approach them with that as like the obvious goal.
Even like putting it on the back. You can just, if it's a problem, you could just turn it and put it on the back, so it doesn't have it, you don't have it here or like here, so it's visible, but make it like less so. Yeah. But I think the most important thing, I think, is this idea of giving something to someone, in not taking. And also that, the image that you're making is not like, there's no truth behind it. It's just your vision at the time of this person, moment in time. There's nothing objective about photography. So, yeah.
So you have the books on your website. Are you working on something else now?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. So I basically found this woman's archive by chance. So when I was editing film in Sweden a couple of years ago, and this was a huge archive of over 10,500 glass negatives, and it was a complete chance meeting. And the archive was recovered from the city dump where it had been thrown. And this archivist had dug it out with a shovel himself and saved it. And then it was in an archive in Sweden, but a lot of things were broken. But this was my relative, so it's kind of a Vivian Meyer story. And going into these images, it's like going into a rabbit hole, because so many years had now passed since I saw this archive the first time. I mean, I've digitized 500 images of 10,500, and so I have 10,000 more to go, and I won't do that, but because it's inside of a fridge and I have to photograph it, not scan it. So I'm making a film about her, and through her images and my search for her, and how women are erased from history and how they're not part of the history writing. So it's about archivism in a way. Yeah.
Is the photographer related to you, or the archivist that found them?
Oh, the photographer.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds great.
Yeah.
That's quite a great story. So I can see how that'll make a good movie.
Yeah, it's hard because I'm looking at a lot of Chris Marker, which is one of my earliest influences, and yeah. So, but yeah. So it's interesting because, you know, filmmaking is a different animal altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, sure is. Well, that's our time. Thank you again so much for sharing your work with us. And thank you for talking about your other projects as well. I'm sure people that are watching will go to your website to learn more. And we're excited to see what you give us to enjoy in the future.
Thank you so much.